Happy Sunday, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today marks a historic afterthought day. Yesterday on July the 13th, one of the important banner days in the Marian apparition at Fatima, there was an attempted assassination on ex-future President Trump. And everyone's talking about, as always, the wrong angles. The head of the Secret Service is a lady, and the gross incompetence has led conservative normies to talk about it in a way that's sort of encouraging, but always still misleading. So most of us, including yours truly, did not know that the head of the Secret Service is a lady girl, but it's not surprising. And now conservatives are whining about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, saying she was a diversity, equity, inclusion hire. And I'm just saying, stop. Conservative normies, please shut up about the evils of DEI. Literally, DEI is just the formalization and the codification of the women in the workplace lie that all of you embraced in 1970. And the proof of the fact that they have this wrong lies in the fact that this story is all over Twitter now. It is what people are talking about. The lady Secret Service boss who had bad credentials. She was just from PepsiCo as some sort of tech defense person. That's why this failed. A slightly less normie conservatives will talk about it as she was a DEI hire, and that there's this goal that the Secret Service has professed by 2030 to have 30% female recruits. So slightly less normies think that they're venturing out onto the branch, out onto the limb by talking about that. And I'm saying, STFU, normies. You guys refuse to say that. What's the Secret Service lady's name? Let's get her name. I'll be that respectful. Sorry. You guys refuse to say this is really not her fault. This is not her lack of credentials' fault. It's not her gross incompetence's fault. It's America's fault for making her believe that she should be in the workplace. And now slightly less conservative normies are saying things like, yeah, categorically, she shouldn't be in this kind of job. Categorically, DEI is wrong. DEI just says, look, if women belong in the workplace, why shouldn't the number of females in the jobs be closer to 50%? I don't like DEI. Of course, I'm far on the other extreme. DEI is not to blame here, though. It's conservative normies who have been pimping out their wives, the mothers of their children, for extra dollars cash, knowing that it doesn't matter whether your wife's a Secret Service agent or a commando or an Army Ranger or a Navy SEAL. Yeah, normies will complain about that, or a police officer or a fireman or, I don't know, an MMA fighter. Even normies get that that's gender dysphoria. But any job, teacher, you need male teachers for your children, especially in like Catholic schools where there's almost no, in Catholic elementary school, there are no Men teaching your children. You need men. Doctors, lawyers.
Her name is Kimberly.
Kimberly. What's the last name? Oh, yeah. Kimberly Cheadle. Don't blame her. She's just, I don't mean this symbolically. I mean it literally. Leave the poor woman alone. Kimberly Cheadle. She's just a lady that buys, like 99% of everyone, cultural lies. Human beings, aside from the very exceptional, buy cultural lies. This cultural lie began in 1848 at the Seneca Falls Convention. You've heard me talk about this. But really culminated in 1970, which was the inflection point. All the women flushed into the workforce in the 70s. Okay? And President Trump nearly died, I guess. I don't know what to think about that. It's a fishy kind of story until you remember that it's a female Secret Service lead named Kimberly Cheadle. Then it's like, well, now it makes sense. But it is kind of fishy. I mean, that was like the building of all buildings that you would use, that an assassin would use. And so there's kind of normie conspiracy theories. There's the normies who just believe everything they hear. I'm glad Trump's okay, but I don't really care about anything besides conservatives for once need to get the story right. It's not Kimberly's fault. It's not DEI's fault. It's America's fault. And by the way, Trump is all in on feminism. He might pick a female VP. He gave us Amy Coney Barrett. Trump is DEI. Why do you hate DEI? It's important to get this right for once. She should be fired not because of her lack of qualifications. She should be fired for her lack of testicles. Literally, it's that simple. And it's not just because it's a job where, do we have the picture of her? Where she's ducking. She came up with an excuse after the first attempted kill shot to pick up his hat, to get out of his way, because it's scary to do your job as SS, which is to keep your body in his way. That's their protocol. They form a cover and they move with him. And she's like, oh, let me get his hat. Let me tie his shoe. Let me flick this ant off the ground in front of his shoe. Let me tie my shoe. Anything to get out of the way. That is not her fault. She is a woman. Women do such things because they deserve protection. She's the boss of Secret Service. And you guys go, yeah, Tim, I'm with you to an extent. But I mean, like, why can't women teach our children? Because as incompetent as Kimberly Cheadle is at protecting Trump, all your kids' school teachers are at convincing your kids of the truth of the faith, convincing your kids of the truth of whatever they're doing. Young boys, young girls listen to men. That's how God created the universe. So yeah, I'm not saying that a president nearly died and a man named Corey Comperatore lost his life. Let's talk about that. I'm glad Trump's okay. I don't really care about the conspiracy theories or the regular theory. I'm more interested in the real gold here, which is America needs to get square with anti-feminism. Needs to get straight with feminism. Their lies and my lies were never settled, as Rage Against the Machine once sang.
It's interesting to me, like looking at the footage, which we've been just like nonstop watching, like all the video, these women, it's not just one of them. It's all of the Secret Service women they're all panicked. The iconic photo of Trump with his fist in the air, which we have on the screen right now, this woman is like 1.5 feet shorter than Trump, and she's still basically guarding herself. She's bowed down. She can't even cover most of this man's body. I mean, this is where we are in the society where people, I'm looking at it right now in chat, they're like, this isn't the issue. Guys, this is the issue. Our president was nearly taken out because you out there in chat right now who are saying that this isn't the issue. This is what happens. You don't think feminism is a problem and you just look the other way, and now we have our president's head exposed to a bullet because the women are so horribly incompetent, not just in physically covering the man that they're supposed to cover, but they should have
But
secured
in
that
jobs
roof.
outside of the home. Yeah, securing the roof. This guy, Comperatore, actually died because of, and again, conspiracy theory, not conspiracy theory. I really don't care. I couldn't care less. It's not about Trump for me. It's about every individual home and all of the normies buying at most, well, this is diversity, equity, inclusion to blame. No, it's not, man. Diversity, equity, inclusion makes sense if you believe that women should be in the workplace. Sorry. Diversity, equity, inclusion makes a lot of sense if you believe women should be in the workplace in the first place. Why shouldn't it be closer to 50%? Answer me that. Why shouldn't it be close? If it's not a wrong principle that married women, and people should be getting married closer to 20 rather than 30. So this should be basically all women. Married women should not be in the workplace. If you believe they should, then what's your problem with DEI? Throw it at me in the chat. Why is DEI wrong if women belong in the workplace? Let me read this touching story. This man died, a fire chief, former fire chief, and his daughter Allison, who was arguably saved by him, wrote this letter. Yesterday, time stopped, and when it started again, my family and I started living a real-life nightmare. What was supposed to be an exciting day that we'd all looked forward to, especially my dad, turned into the most traumatizing experiences someone could imagine. I know the media will cover this event, and I'm going to try my best to stay away from looking at everything, because especially I've already seen and lived through it in real time. But I want everyone to know what the media will not cover and will not say about him. He was the best dad a girl could ever ask for. My sister and I never needed for anything. You call, he would answer, and he would do whatever it is you needed. And if he didn't know how, he could figure out how. He could talk and make friends with anyone, which he was doing all day yesterday, and loved every minute of it. He was a man of God, loved Jesus fiercely, and he looked after our church and our church members as family. The media will not tell you he died a real-life superhero. They're not going to tell you how quickly he threw my mom and I to the ground. They're not going to tell you how he shielded my body from the bullet that came at us. Well, that part we did here, but all the rest of this is really good stuff. He loved his family. He truly loved us enough to take a real bullet for us. That's an expression for a reason. That's what a man does. He has no training. That's what a man does. He has no training. He's a fireman, not a Secret Service guy. He wasn't trained at Pepsi. He doesn't need to. If a man were, if Corey were in Kimberly's position, he would not have pretended to tie a shoe or pick up a hat. He would have done his job because he's a man. Do you understand? I'm not trying to be exaggerative here. The incompetence of Kimberly Cheadle stemmed not from where she worked before. It stems from the fact that she worked outside of the home. Do you get it yet? And the proof is a man like Corey, Comperatore, I'm reading his daughter's letter right now. It's touching, legitimately. With no training. He's a fire chief guy, a former fire chief man. They're not, whether he was or wasn't ever trained, the difference between cover and concealment, how best to do body cover, center of mass cover, it doesn't matter. Look what he did for his family. Look what any man who's not a complete wuss would do for their family. I mean, look, consult your phantasms. You know that unless you have a loser of a dad, he would do this for you. Even if he might not be a perfect dad. He might not pray with you. He might not have played with you enough. He might not have been tender. He might have been a little too tender. But if he has a bit of the right stuff, he would have done what Corey Comperatore did for his daughter Allison. And guess what? Neither of those guys, had they been without a day of training assigned to President Trump, they would have been like those guys that help the cops and fight the criminals better than the cops. He would have been better than the SS. He would not have pretended to stoop and pick up his hat. Don't blame Kimberly Cheadle. I am not being tongue-in-cheek here. My tongue's not planted in my cheek. It's not her fault. It's your fault, America. It's your fault. Well, DEI. There's nothing wrong with DEI. If women are supposed to be in the workplace. If women belong in the workplace, then what's wrong with DEI? This guy, Comperatore, did what basically any decent man, and by decent, I'm really loosening the standards here on what qualifies as decent. This guy loved Jesus. Great. I hope he's up in heaven for being a dad who took a real life bullet and his daughter said he loved Jesus. I hope he is. Pray for this man's soul. And another person was hurt critically, but I think is going to pull through. But the point is, with no training, this guy could have worked at PepsiCo in whatever job Kimberly Cheadle did her whole life. He would have done, I guarantee you, he would have done a good job covering Trump the way he covered his daughter, Allison.
Well, he did.
He did.
He did exactly the job that this woman should have done.
Yeah.
Trump should have never been even grazed by a bullet.
Yeah, and the reason that it all ends up being his fault is because the building 152 yards away, I don't know which of you are hunters and which are not, but a hunter ought to be able to it's an embarrassment if you miss the heart of a deer from 152 yards away. You ought to be able to put 3 bullets in a silver dollar from 152 yards away, firing from a prone position. That building, it is fishy. I'm not going to say, I just don't care about all the theories anymore. That's all the sparkling lights for normies. It is weird. That was the number one building any would-be assassin would want. 152 yards is nothing. And it's really also fishy that he missed. How do you miss that shot? Prone. You don't even touch the rifle. You just go, bing. There's basically no drop at that level. It's the perfect shot. Why was, they say CIA and Secret Service didn't need to be on the same building. Okay, that is a funny joke. But the point is, it's very remarkable that now people are asking, that normie conservatives think they're wearing their big boy cutting edge anti-feminism pants by critiquing DEI. Even Ann Coulter. Oh, Ann Coulter's kind of hard on feminists, but it's like, why don't you, with all due respect, like get a husband and just cook? That's what women are really great at. They make society lovely. They're pretty. When they're at home, they're sweet. When they just aren't seeking publicity or to be in the public forum, they're better than any man. I mean, the best saint is a woman. Queen of saints is a woman, but she stayed home.
The best saint is a woman because she acted like a woman.
Right. Mirky, stay over there, little Mirk. I'll just finish this letter, so it's not. I didn't mean to go off on a screed here. We lost a selfless, loving husband, father, brother. It's uncle, son, and friend, and I'll never stop thinking about him and mourning over him until the day that I die too. July 13th will forever be a day that changed my life. I will never be the same person I was less than 24 hours ago. There are a lot of children out there that say their dad is their hero, but my dad really is mine. Yeah, and it's proven now. He's been through the fire. He's proven it. She doesn't have him around, and I'm sorry. This gets me choked up, guys that can't get around their kids, raise their kids, but he did his job. I don't think I would be here today without him. Dad, I love you so much that there aren't enough words to express how deep the love goes. I know you'll give heaven some hell. I know that God is proud of the man that came to his gates yesterday. I mean, okay, so there's that. There's that angle. This guy died because a woman was in charge of SS. And assuming that some of the story is true, some of the mainstream narrative is true, which I will for the sake of this more important story. I'm looking at the house across the street. If you look at that house, Steph, that's right at 150 yards away. Maybe it's about 125. I mean, that's just a perfect shot. And no one who'd been hunting 3 times would miss a perfect heart shot on a deer from 150 yards away when they're laying prone, elevated at a perfect angle. It's a turkey shoot. So this all happened because not of DEI. Not of DEI. It's not because of DEI. Tell me, someone in the chat who leans a little normie, why, oh why, is DEI wrong if you believe that if you believe women should be in the workplace? Why, oh why, if you believe women belong in the workplace, is DEI wrong?
I was even just kind of thinking to myself when I'm looking at this iconic photo. The reason that that photo is iconic, by the way, is because the woman is too short to cover Trump's face, which we can clearly see, which also a shooter could clearly see.
Yeah.
And people were noticing too, like all these there's a hilarious video of these women once Trump is safely in the car, thank goodness. They have no idea what they're doing. It's like on Reno 911. And half of them are grossly overweight. I mean, they're just panicked, fat, totally incompetent. Like this isn't now that we know Trump's fine, this is an actual national embarrassment. That these are the images that we're seeing. The women's Secret Service basically freaking out, not knowing what to do. Look at their composure compared to the men's Secret Service agents. They're the ones that are standing erect. They're not like the bullets are flying. They're just standing there. They're looking, for the assailant. The women are just running around, adjusting their glasses. One can't even figure out how to put her gun back into her holder. She tries twice to put her gun back in her holder. She can't do it.
Yeah. I this is the kind of show where you guys subscribe to us on YouTube, and we can get a pop-in chat going where I will interact with you more than once if you become a YouTube subscriber. Whether you agree with me, I'd love to interact with you, or you disagree with me, I'd still love to interact with you. Become the $5 or $10 level so we can get a kind of insular chat going, and we can preference that to the regular chat. That's I think the best way to do this. And then we can get regulars, and I can be like, hey, Bill, I know you like the DEI argument. Why is DEI wrong if women belong in the workplace? And we can have a conversation.
There's a guy in chat that says DEI is not just about women, Tim. It's about all of these new privileged classes. Timothy, your logic is off. I would move on.
No, I'm not saying it's just about women. So just as not all rectangles are squares, all squares are rectangles. The story, that wasn't my assumption. The story of the hour is about female incompetence in a certain kind of workplace. And I've expanded that genetically and generically to, we ought to be saying, what all of human history confessed prior to 1970, women don't belong in the workplace. What every pope of the 20th century, 8 popes of the 20th century said women belong out of the workplace. Are you a Catholic? Maybe not. But Christianity says it. The Bible says it. All of the first catechisms say it. All the apostles believed it. Mary, Queen of Saints, never left the home. Greatest saint. By being what she was. Now, society became deeply gender dysphoric. I'm not talking about men in dresses. I don't care about that. Functionally gender dysphoric by shaming women into the workplace between 1848 and 1970. Took about 120 years. The great dialogue between Simone de Beauvoir and Betty Friedan. Michael Knowles cites all the time. It's published. They say, look, the main, and this is expressed at 1848 Seneca Falls Convention, our main goal is to get women away from their kids and away from their homes. This is how we bring down the patriarchy, by which they meant Christianity. The French way, according to Simone de Beauvoir, older feminist in the early 20th century, of accomplishing the 1848 Seneca Falls goals was through legislation. Make women, Simone de Beauvoir wrote, younger American feminist Betty Friedan, make them legislatively, make women get out of the home and into the workplace. tax them, penalize them, provide subsidy, and even you know, I think she talked about illegalizing being at home. Betty Friedan said, no, Americans, you know, we're more into an individual autonomy. I don't think that'll work. The best way that'll work, that'll be compelling for American women, is shame. And that's what was used here. Even women who stay home because they know they're women and they're not gender dysphoric, the way women who go into the workplace are gender dysphoric, thinking they're men, they are embarrassed. And they're like, well, I consider staying at home a job. It's not. It's not a job. It's better than a job. It's your vocation. It doesn't have to be likened to a job. You don't have to pretend, stay-at-home wives, that staying at home is a job. You don't have to get up at a certain time. You can put your kids to bed later so they'll wake up later, the ones that stay home with you. You can craft your own schedule if you have a nice husband who lets you do it. Wake up late. Cook pancakes every morning. Start homeschool at 10:30 a.m., 11 a.m. It only lasts 2 hours. Look, care for your babies the way that you like. You can have the radio on. You can be in your slippers and your robe all day long and be a great mom. It's not a job. It's more important than a job. Women who stay home make society lovely, inspire men to go do their jobs better and come home happier. It's not a job. Even that's a cope, even among stay-at-home wives who get it right. But when conservative normies say, well, this is about DEI, let's get back to the comment. This is about DEI, which forces closer to 50-50, black, white, man, female, straight, not straight, whatever. That's really lame. I mean, maybe theoretically, but I want to know why, if it's appropriate for women to be in the workplace, why not expect closer to 50-50? You'd say, oh, it should be individual employers' decisions. Yeah, I mean, I probably agree with that. But I don't really care. The bigger idea is women shouldn't be in the workplace. And so why are you addressing DEI instead of the fact that any women are in any workplace? Because they're not competent. I mean, conservatism is just liberalism driving the speed limit, right? I think normie conservatives say that. Well, what all of society thought, all of human history, prior to a couple, 3, 4 decades ago, 1970 to 1980 is when the Betty Friedan model of flushing females out of the home into the workplace really became effective. And we have all the statistics. Betsy Wolfer and Stevenson did a big study that Time Magazine has covered periodically. Every few years, they'll retouch on it, called The Paradox of Declining Female Happiness. Since females went into the workforce starting in 1970, they get unhappier every year, 5 years, 10 years. Why is that? And they call it a paradox, which means it's an unexpected thing. I would say it's a phenomenon, not a paradox. It's a phenomenon that makes sense, the opposite of a paradox. A paradox is a phenomenon that doesn't make sense or is counterintuitive with relation to our expectations. Ex ante. Ex post, it looks different than how we ought to have expected it to look, ex ante. Well, women who all of even the 20th century popes, the Catechism of Trent says they should not go abroad, go out unless it's absolute necessity. They ought to love to stay home. They ought to ask their husband's permission to go out at all. That's the Catholic Catechism. The only teaching we have on it in the Catechism. Never been abrogated. Why would it be called a paradox that when women contradict that dysphorically, if your wife works, then this is functional gender dysphoria. It's worse than ontological gender dysphoria, which is like Bruce Jenner. That's maybe a little bit crazier, but this is more pervasive and worse. That affects one person out of an imagined Googleplex. That affects basically no one. Ontological gender dysphoria. But functional gender dysphoria affects more than well over half of you guys. If you think that as a man, you can act like a woman, functional like a woman, and not be really unhappy, then you're crazy, you're dysphoric. That means you hate your own male nature. If you're a woman who thinks that you can function like a man, then it means you hate yourself. Because much more than ethnicity, much more than race or nationality, our sex is a much more prominent part of our personality, of our identity.
And also, it's just like ridiculous looking. We have the video right now of the at least four women Secret Service agents surrounding Trump's car. They're adjusting their buns, their glasses. One pulls her little coat down. They are all about them. These ladies are all about themselves and not the task at hand. And one of them, the particularly fat one, cannot even figure out how to use her gun. I mean, it's just...
Is it playing?
This is a comedy of errors. Yeah, it's on the screen right now. Just to point out what we're talking about. None of the women present knew what to do at all. Not one of them. Just for a statistical sampling of how women handle a crisis.
It is a mistake to maintain that women's rights are the same as man's. It's Pope Leo this is Pope Pius X. Women in war or parliament are outside their proper sphere, and their position there would be the desperation and ruin of society. It's a 20th century Pope. Women created as man's companion must so remain always under his power. Should she be the more powerful one? Out of the home? Pretending to protect the president? No. And the fact that Kimberly cheated on protecting a man. President Trump, I'm going to be honest, should be ashamed that he was being protected by a woman. He ought to have been protecting her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to always be so far out of... Now, if he had other men who had volunteered their lives to protect his, then it would be like, well, he's president, so they ought to be protecting him. But a man, the identity is much more circumscribed by sex than any of these other DEI categories, and that's why I care about it so much more than ethnicity or race or nationality. Here is Benedict 15, I believe. With religion's decline, cultured women have lost their sense of shame along with their piety. Many, in order to take up tasks ill-befitting their sex, he means going and getting jobs, took to imitating men. I told you, gender dysphoria. Another 20th century Pope. Others abandoned the duties of wives for which they were formed to be cast into the current of life. Does he sound like he agrees with me or with the guy in the chat who was saying, I'm wrong on this? These are 20th century popes. I'm a Roman Catholic. Here's another 20th century pope. This is Pius XI. I read you Pius XII and Benedict 15. Wifely work outside the home is the topic, is the debasing of the womanly character and the dignity of motherhood, of the whole family. As a result of which the husband suffers the loss of his wife, the kids of their mother, and the home and family of an ever-watchful guardian. This false liberalism, and unnatural equality with the husband is to the detriment of the woman herself, for if the woman descends from her regal throne, meaning in the home, where women belong, it's a regal throne. They should be treated like a queen there. She will soon be reduced to the old state of slavery and become, as among the pagans, a mere instrument of man. I mean, think of that as you have a large, strongish, old but strongish 6'4" man being protected by a little fat woman.
There's a funny joke on Twitter. I think it was about 3 weeks ago. It's like, why are women and children evacuated first in a crisis? It's so that the men can think in peace. Like, you look at these women, these gals, these broads standing outside of the Secret Service or the Trump's motorcade, and I feel panicked, like watching them like spin and turn and gyrate, and their hands are in the air and their ponytails are flying everywhere. Like, it's just it's nerve-wracking.
But again, it's not just because this is a martial law, military show of force appropriate situation. That's where normies are going to take it. They are frantic. I taught 10 years in the classroom, 8 in high school and 2 years at college. And every woman teacher I ever heard. I had a class next to a woman teacher, and they have to keep control of the classroom, they have to yell all the time. My students and I would get quiet and we'd listen to the lady next to me yelling, "Hey guys, blah, blah." No one listens to women. They're not authorities. They can be second authority when the man is present in the home, but only in the home can they be even a secondary authority. God made them this way, not me. And high school teachers, middle school teachers, even elementary teachers have no control over the classroom. And the students would be like, "Mr. Gordon, let's get quiet and listen to her shrieking." That's how every female teacher I ever taught with was. They had no control of the classroom. They had no control of the subject matter. Even if they liked it privately, they couldn't expound upon it in a class. They would have to lesson plan for hours instead of just having a man's mastery over it and come in. I'm not saying women can't study something and know it. I'm saying they don't have the kind of mastery necessary to being a doctor, a teacher. The Catholic Church didn't have any female doctors for nearly 2,000 years until feminist Vatican II said we got to get some doctors. Pius XI also says this: to abuse the years of childhood and limited strength of women is grossly wrong. Limited strength of women. Think yesterday. Trump is hiding behind a woman. Mothers should work in the home or its immediate vicinity. We call that in law the curtilage. That this is his express teaching, along with 2,000 years of Christianity, that women are allowed to help their husband farmers in the field around their house. Very specific teaching, contrary to how you've been lied to. Oh, there's no teaching on this. Mothers should work in the home or its immediate vicinity. It is an intolerable abuse. Think mortal sin here. Intolerable abuse to be abolished at all cost for mothers to be forced to engage in gainful occupations outside the home. Could this be any clearer? This is Pius XI, who hated communism. Here's a quote of his on communism, still Pius XI. I'm freezing it here. Communism is characterized by the rejection of any link that binds woman to the family and the home, and her emancipation is claimed as a basic principle. It's claimed as a basic principle here. That's why DEI is wrong, but not women outside outside the home in the workplace, Tim. That's what normies said. No, that's because you bought the communist principle. It's worse than communist, but Pius XI was obsessed with communism, so he uses it as his dirtiest word. Her emancipation is claimed by the communists as a basic principle, and you guys who are saying the normie things, like, well, women shouldn't be in martial workplaces, but they should be nurses and teachers. No. The emancipation from the home is claimed by communists as a basic principle. This is not a pope from 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago. This is a 20th century pope. Mother is withdrawn from the family and the care of the kids. The care of the home and the kids then devolves upon the collectivity, which is why it's communist. Here's Pius XII. He's talking about women leaving the home for the workplace. By the way, this did begin happening before 1970. Rosie the Riveter was an experiment in World War II. Remember, not to get too theory on you, but World War II, World War I, very orchestrated wars. So there was an experiment during both world wars in between 1848 and 1970 of women in the workplace. And Pius XII knew it, Pope during the late 40s through late 50s. Has woman's position been thereby improved, leaving the home? Previous to 1970. Equality of rights with man brought her abandonment of the home, where she reigned queen. Several of the popes have mentioned that. Your wife is your queen at home. Where she reigned queen, and her subjection to the same work strain and hours, entailing depreciation of her true dignity and the solid foundation of her rights, her feminine role. He goes on, Pius XII. We see a woman who, in order to augment her husband's earnings, betakes herself to a factory. He's not just criticizing women Secret Service agents. Factory worker, leaving her house abandoned during her absence. The house, untidy and small perhaps before, becomes even more miserable for her lack of care. That's Pius XII. This is all 20th century stuff. For those liars out there, lying Catholics and Christians who say, yeah, the Bible says women need to stay home. Book of Sirach says it. It's a shame if a man's wife earns money from outside the home. But that's really old. It's an old dusty book. But there's nothing updated that says that. Oh, what about the Catechism of Trent, which forbids women from leaving the home? Well, that's 500 years old, but there are no 20th century popes. Yeah, I just read you a bunch. Here's even liberal Vatican II joining the 20th century popes in condemning wifely, non-domestic work. I mean, I don't think work around the house counts as what we mean by wage work.
That's a vocation.
It's a vocation. The kids, especially the younger ones, need the care of their mother at home. This domestic role must be safely preserved. Is it being preserved? Well, no, that's why DEI is lame. That's why women shouldn't do certain kinds of jobs. Women shouldn't do any jobs outside the home. Here's even liberal Pope Paul VI, Vatican II Pope Paul VI. This is the actual quote that I was searching for. Even in the glorified state, meaning our glorified heavenly bodies, in humans, the difference of sex exercises an important influence, sex difference, much deeper than ethnic differences. And the latter the ethnic differences do not affect the human as intimately as the difference of sex. The effect of God's will from the beginning, male and female, he created them. So what Paul VI is saying here that's actually great is that, guys out there will claim racial realism. And I'm like, yeah, no, race isn't nothing. It's not very important, but it's not nothing the way we were kind of lied to. Like people have a natural inclination to, for their own clan, for their own family. And that's why family tends to look like you. That's how genes work. Not denim, but this is how genetics work. Your family looks like you. You trust people more, like people more, sacrifice for people more if they tend to look like. Okay, so I get it. Ethnicity isn't nothing, but it's not very close to the bone of human identity. What the closest category, DEI category is to the bone is sex. Are you a male or a female? During the 80s and 90s, when you'd have kind of a proto-DEI commercial showing like a dad of an ethnicity playing with his kids that, whereas, in those days, maybe even today, most of those kids didn't really have a dad at home. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an exaggeration, a politically correct exaggeration, but it's still the ideal. You still want people of all ethnicities to know their fathers, even if in certain ethnicities, most of the kids won't know their fathers or live with their fathers. It's still the ideal, so I don't have that much of a problem with 1980s commercial affirmative action, where it shows like, oh, this dad's like raising his family. A lot of ethnicities, some ethnicities just don't do that 80% of the time. But I have no problem with it because it's natural for those 20% of those dads in that ethnicity to do it and to do it well. Because why? Because of the category that matters. Not black or white, but male, female. A man is supposed to be there with his family, and 20 or 25% of them, even in the 80s when I think it was at an all-time low with that ethnicity, 25% of them got it right. I'm a man. I had a family. My job is protection, provision, prayer, and play. Protection, provision, prayer, and play. Those are my jobs. Protection, provision, prayer, and play. And so the first question you should ask of a human being is, okay, like Jesus, I think when he's going with you at your particular judgment, he's going, okay, let's see if you did a good job. Not that the thought will be propositional. I think it'll be infused, or else you just don't have the time. But if it was propositional, it'd be like, okay, what are you, a man or a woman? Okay. So you have totally different duties. You're totally different. You're totally unequal in all ways aside from dignity. Men are higher ranked than women in society and the family. Okay, here are your duties. You're a man. Or if you're a woman, here are your duties. You're judged according to that. Because sex, like Pope Pius XII says, Pope Paul VI, is a much deeper influence on identity than ethnic differences. Mm-hmm. The people trying to be cutting edge on the internet are like, I'm a racial realist. I mean, I'm not saying ethnicity is nothing. I'm not saying everyone needs to be totally colorblind. It's a boomer version. It's just not as important as most people who call themselves racial realists believe. What's really important is the inequality. We reestablished the vast inequality between men and women. We're not equal. We're not anything alike. The difference between a man and a woman is 1,000 times more profound and impactful than the difference between a black man and a white man. A black man and a white man have ethnic differences, but they don't really go to the bone. They still have the same basic duties that Jesus charges said black man or said white man with. There are different talents that accord with the ethnicities and different predispositions and biases. And those don't amount to nothing. But they're 1,000, which I guess is just 1,000,000 times more important than the ethnic differences. Here's John Paul II, who kind of wanted to be a feminist pope at times, saying this: having to abandon wifely tasks in order to take up paid work outside the home is wrong from the point of view of the good of society and of the family, when it contradicts or hinders these primary goals of the mission of a mother.
There's people in chat, or the one guy in chat that gave you the question earlier has another real banger about Margaret Thatcher being a leader. I'd like to pass it over to you, but before I do so, she lost confidence in her supporters at the end of her time being prime minister and was ushered out of office. And the reason that Margaret Thatcher, people like to talk about her as a strong woman leader, is because she tried to emulate a man, and she failed doing so, because when women try to be manly or to exhibit characteristics and leadership that they think a man would have, they always overstep their mark. They always pour it on too much, and that's what happened in the case of Margaret Thatcher. Obstinance and stubbornness are not a male feature. That's what women think men are doing when they're being strong.
Yeah.
And they misstep and they overstep every single time. So even these strong women leaders like Margaret Thatcher,
they're not strong.
They're not.
She's a bad. Okay, sir, I don't know if you're a Catholic. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but here's my favorite pope of the last 200 years. Pope Leo XIII, a genius. 25-year pontificate. He had like 75 encyclicals, and they're all genius. The Thomist Pope. He's the one that made Thomas like the common doctor. Leo XIII. I could listen to your normie boomerisms, which spin a lot. Margaret Thatcher was a horrible leader, and I know because she had breasts. It's a fact. Or I could listen to the best pope of the last 200 years, Leo XIII. It is a mistake to maintain that women's rights are the same as man's. Women in war or parliament, or heading parliament, the leader of parliament, are outside their proper sphere, and their position there would be the desperation and ruin of society. Okay, he's my favorite pope. You're not. I don't appeal to authority that much. I reason stuff through for people most of the time. But here, I don't accept that Margaret Thatcher was a good leader. She was a bad leader. She was a woman. Woman created as man's companion must so remain always under his power, not in charge of him. St. Paul says this in the Bible. He forbid any woman from teaching any man.
I guess it could be argued that a woman who gains a leadership position isn't going to be, she's always a failure, but she's not going to be like the broad standing aside Trump's motorcade level of failure, because they try, in the case of Margaret Thatcher, to act like a man, but women don't know how to do that because they're not men. They're always wrong.
Remember when Hillary Clinton was on the 2016 campaign trail and she's trying to do the Southern male accent? It's up there. I mean, I can't say it's the strangest Hillary moment because there are so many contenders, but it's up there. It makes the top 5 or top 10 hit list, which is saying a lot with Hillary Rodham. But she was like, "Hey, y'all, I'm doing," and everyone was like, "What the fuck? Like, what are you doing?" That women who try to be men are gender dysphoric, and I don't mean that they're. Here's the thing. I've made this distinction between functional gender dysphoria, women who still claim to be straight women, but who model every minute of their day, every hour of their 24 after men, and they say, "I'm going to do what a man does." Well, they wear the shoulder pads. They started wearing pants, which none of you condemn, but if a man wears a dress, you condemn him. And so this kind of makes me tempted to break down my distinction of kind between functional gender dysphoria, which is just feminism, and ontological gender dysphoria, which is just like transvestitism or whatever they call it now. You guys, normies, decry the latter but not the former, and I'm always like, well, we should decry the latter and the former. Now I'm going further, and I'm just like, there's no difference between functional and ontological gender dysphoria. If you hate what it is to be a woman, to be fragile and weak and private and receptive and domestic, and instead you try to be active rather than passive, expressive rather than receptive, public rather than private, public square oriented, it means you're out working, rather than domestic, and you're trying to be an economic actor, producer in society, rather than the recipient of your husband's economic production, then you are functionally gender dysphoric.
And disasters follow. This is what we always see on social media, even before this blunder with all these lady Secret Service agents, like female cops, like overreacting and shooting people. Like, just anytime you get pulled over by a female cop, it's just an overboard aggression and unpleasantness because they're trying to be men. They don't know how to be men, so they just approximate, like, okay, men are brusque and they talk very sternly,
right,
and
they throw out their shoulders.
They throw out their shoulders and they don't compromise. Men never compromise, so that's what I'm gonna do. They have no clue what they're doing.
Yeah.
Just be a woman.
This is the number one cause of female, like, stubbornness, I think, is because sometime between 1848 and 1970, it became the norm for almost all 98% of women in society to be just raging gender dysphorics. So they're always thinking, what would a man do in this situation? And I need to emulate it. They think, well, strong men don't compromise. So they're always like, no, I won't budge from this position. The truth is, strong men won't compromise on principle, but will nonstop compromise on non-principles. I'll always tell my kid, okay, here's the principle in the situation. You can't do this. Anything else that's a moving part is non-negotiable. And women, even smart women like you, struggle to get that.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything. And this is the number one mark. Someone like Trump, he wrote the art of the deal. Women are like, what would Trump do? He doesn't compromise at all. He doesn't negotiate. He wrote the art of the deal. Do you know the central premise in that text? It's all about, like, give the other guys everything they think they want. That's what strong men do. Strong men are always compromise. It's not even a compromise. Just strong men only care about principles. So you're like, here's the two principles. No one can touch these. I couldn't change them if I tried. I couldn't change it. The principle is the natural law and God's. But here's this. I'll give you these things you think you want because weak men don't care about principles and only want goodies. A lot women and children don't care about the principle that you're saying you won't compromise on. They're not disappointed. They just want the goodies.
It's,
I'm not exaggerating.
No, it's true. And the thing about women is that they don't want to be proud of doing domestic chores. But I'll say this, like, if I had to do a laundry list of chores in a day, and you had to do, Tim, the same laundry list of chores in the day, I'm going to be far more efficient at that sort of domestic work than you are, because a woman's brain is particular to those sorts of tasks. Like, not saying that you couldn't lift things better than me, or there's some things in the aspects of that you would be more efficient with, but with women's chores, children, taking care of babies, that sort of thing, even how to hold a baby, those sorts of things that are particular to women, we are far more efficient at. And then
because you're made for them.
That's what we're made for. And then you see these women who are protecting the president, they have no idea what to do. And this is the problem. Women don't want to be proud of the fact that we're domestic and private, and the chores and the tasks that we are best fit for aren't glamorous, and you don't get to wear sunglasses and a bun and a blazer and be on national television and boss guys around. That's the dysphoric nature that we're seeing in society. They're ill-fitted to wear blazers and sunglasses and to be astride a motorcade.
This is the best point so far. When you take my Aristotle's ethics course, which is up on timothyjgordon.com, $75. It's probably the best course on there, though. They're like almost 20, and they're all $75. A save one, and it's so good. Go click enroll in timothyjgordon.com. It's such an important class, Aristotle's ethics. I teach you about Aristotle's function argument, the relationship between ergon, the formal, in this case, formal cause of a thing, and telos, its purpose. A thing is deemed a good thing or a bad version of whatever that thing is based on how efficiently it serves its ergon. How efficiently the ergon serves its telos. So a wrench is really good at being a wrench. A hammer is really good at being a hammer. You could use a wrench as a hammer or a hammer as a wrench, but they're a really bad version because they're a really inefficient version. That's called the function argument. What Steph just said has not a whit of feminism in it to say, when we do home stuff around the house, and I help because I'm around the house more than I used to be when I worked as a teacher or a lawyer or a landman. Those are the three jobs careers I've worked for short to long times. 1 year as a first-year attorney, non-barred attorney. Basically 2 years as a landman for a petroleum and oil company. And 10 years, 8 years as a high school teacher, 2 years as a community college teacher, professor, whatever, adjunct. Now that I'm around the house more, I offer help. I don't change the baby's diapers, but I change Abby's diapers more often because I'm around the bigger kids more often. Steph's around the babies typically. So I don't do that, but I'll help. If we're having guests, we have a lot of guests. They call it the Gordon Hotel because we have a lot of guests come through. There are certain chores I like helping with. Steph has never once asked me. There's certain chores I'll volunteer because I like some. There's some I'm good at, but I'm still not efficient in the way Steph is because of the function argument. Women are better at being domestic toilers. I'm not going to say workers because that's that cope that even stay-at-home wives use that I don't like. You shouldn't cope. Tell a working lady, I'm a better woman than you. Well, yeah, but do you have a job? Do you consider being a homemaker a job? No, my vocation is being the best woman I can be. The best woman on earth was Mary, who stayed home, queen of the saints. And I want to emulate Mary, the Virgin Mother of God, as much as I can. My husband emulates Jesus, and by proxy, Jesus' stepfather, Joseph, second greatest of all the saints. But I emulate Mary. Do you want to say something about that, Steph? The best saint was barefoot and pregnant, stayed home. She's far better saint than Saint John of Mola.
Yeah, it's sad to me because we have the ultimate North Star for a saintly wife and mother in Our Lady, the Queen of Heaven. And of course, I don't want to detract from the importance of Saint John of Mola, who, by the way, did not become a saint because she was a working mom. She became a saint because she gave her life for her child. And at the end of her life, she actually wanted to quit working because she and her husband admitted that it affected her wifely and motherly vocation. Mm-hmm. But married women always love to recur to these saints that really are not an inspiration to them particularly for their vocation of wifeliness and motherliness. They actually quite literally do not even look to Our Lady, who is perfect in both of those regards. And that just shows me the bias that most Catholic women have against their own chosen vocation of marriage and family, that they won't even look to Our Lady. We have the perfect example. God told us, this is the perfect woman, everybody. Take note at the perfect wife, the perfect mother. I put her on display for you in Scripture, for you to learn from this woman how to be a perfect woman, wife, and mother. And most Catholic ladies are like, no. Okay, it might have been good enough for Mary to sweep a floor and be, subservient to St. Joseph and to Christ. But I need to, get out there, put on sunglasses, wear a bun, and, protect the President of the United States.
and do a bad job at it, or be a bad teacher, be a bad lawyer, be a bad doctor, be a bad whatever.
Right.
When you try to do two jobs, when you take away from the job that God gave you, this is Aristotle's function argument, God gave you the job of wife and mother if you're a married lady. And when you say, I'm going to leave home to do it 40 hours a week or 20, you're going to do both jobs badly. Now, you're going to do the job badly that is impossible for you to do, a man's job, whether it's teacher or lawyer or doctor or garbage man or Secret Service agent. You're going to do it badly because you can't do it well. But what's important is the opportunity cost. Well, I mean, and people get killed. Like this man who was actually killed yesterday. Goodly man. Who would have been a far better Secret Service agent than Kimberly Cheadle.
And how do we know that? Because here's a man who wasn't a Secret Service agent who actually shielded the person nearby from a bullet and saved that person.
Right.
That's how we know men are just pluck any of them out of society, and they're gonna do a better job than the best Secret Service agent, female Secret Service agent you can find. They're just naturally built to understand a crisis and how to hold their body and how to think in those moments. It's clear not one of the female Secret Service, I keep saying this, not one. You look at all the thousands of hours of footage on Twitter right now, every single still and screenshot and video of these women's Secret Service agents, they are frantic. All of them. There's not one that you're like, okay, well, at least this broad held herself, as she should have for this job.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. At the very least, what I hope people can take from a show like this or a book like this, The Case for Patriarchy, or a book like Steph's, which is Ask Your Husband, which is right here, or our forthcoming book, which is called Leave and Cleave, all about how to do marriage right, which involves these principles, is that we're not exaggerating, we're not trying to be provocative or evocative or anything vocative. We're saying precisely as we mean. DEI has nothing wrong with it if women belong in the workplace. Conservative normies always are liberals going the speed limit, which means that in 1970, all conservatives objected to women going into the workplace. But then they quickly tucked their tail and accepted it for the 1970s and 80s and 90s. And just forgot that human history and human nature existed as it was. Man, work, woman, stay home, take care of the home. And so when something like yesterday's President Trump attempted assassination comes to pass, where you have a gender dysphoric woman being placed in the workplace and failing at it yet again, they have to come up with ways to explain why women should be in the workplace, but female incompetence is maybe bad for that job. Or it's not female incompetence, but it's DEI incompetence, which placed the wrong woman in the job. See, that's why I object to DEI. That's why someone's like, they should have gotten a good woman for the job.
Yeah, they're just cowards. These guys on Twitter who are saying that. Just say what the problem is. Women don't belong anywhere outside of the home if they are married. They do not. They do not belong out in the workplace. Just have a spine and say it.
Yeah. But these men can't. 70% of women who have a kid under 6, I think, are in a workplace, which means a larger number of married women are in the workplace than that by the law of averages. So if 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7 married women are in the workplace, what are these men really going to say, Steph? Can you address that? What do you want men to say who have pimped out their wives for an extra X thousand per year? Like, what is it reasonable to expect men to be like, oh, the way I and my wife are living is not in accord with recto ratio, right reason, so I should stop. See, me and you say yes. This is where I don't compromise.
Right, there's not
but that's 50 thou a year. That's 80 thou a year. In some cases, it's 150 thou a year that your wife is bringing. You want me to just bid farewell to that because of the principle? Yes. This is where men just say yes. I don't care if it's $1 million a year. I don't care if it's 10 million a year. This is one of those few principles about which I do not compromise, will not compromise. Get your wife home. If you're able-bodied, I'm not talking about you only bring in 50,000 and your wife brings in $1 million. That's not the exception.
Job.
If you're able-bodied, if you're not paralyzed, the church has always made an exception for like a paralyzed man. If you're able-bodied, if your back is not broken or your neck's not broken or you're not deathly ill, then get your wife out of the workplace no matter how much it costs you monetarily. Because spiritually and morally, you are teaching your family to go to hell and gender dysphoria, and that men can be women and women can be men, and that moms are not caretakers, and that there's not a distinction between men and women that's real, that's categorical.
Right.
And that your wife doesn't love you or your kids or the home enough to stay there, and you don't love your wife or your kids and your home enough to stand up for your home. And yet again, that men can be women, and that we're fungible, and that all the 20th century popes are wrong, and that the Roman Catechism, which said it's a mortal sin, it implies it's a mortal sin for women to leave, are wrong, and that inerrant scriptures are wrong when they say it's a shame for men to be supported by their wives, and that St. Paul is wrong in the 8 places in New Testament where he says women are to be servants and helpmeets of men. They need to be at home. They shouldn't be teaching. They shouldn't be in positions of power. You're just saying all of that's wrong. You're saying that everything that's good and green and fresh and life-giving in this world, men being men and women being women, is wrong. Men can be women and women can be men.
What about the men who say this? I don't understand the argument. Just get a better job. Go back to school. Figure out a better city to live in when your expenses are less in order for you not to be able to pimp out your wife for a buck. And let's be honest. I was just reading this in some of the papal documents for our upcoming marriage book. Some of the popes pointed out this very good point. They said after a woman's the taxes and daycare costs and whatever costs, housekeeping costs,
which offset what she brings in.
She's really not adding that much to the household. And even if she was, like you said, even if she was bringing in $1 million a year or whatever, what type of man are you that you're not protecting your wife and safeguarding the future of your children by depriving them their right to their mother? It's an absolute disgrace.
Right. So the big story here is not Trump, whether it was real, fake, in between real, fake. I mean, I'm glad he's okay no matter what. I don't understand, even given female incompetence, why that shooter got that shot. It's like from here to my neighbor, I'm looking at his house across the street. It's just the perfect assassin shot, and they didn't even check out the building. That is a bit fishy, but I don't care about any of that. I'm glad Trump didn't get killed, but I'm sad that that Corey, this firefighter man, Corey, I'm forgetting his last name, got killed. I'm really sad about that, but I'm happy that he protected his daughter. And it remains a fact that credentialing had nothing to do with the female incompetence of Kimberly Cheadle. Her chromosomes, XX or XY, had everything to do with her incompetence. And it's not just because it's a martial profession. Any man, like Mr. Corey, who died yesterday, would have done a better job than any even credentialed female Secret Service agent. And I would say that about the other jobs as well, not just the ones that involve martial skills.
Well, that's where
recap.
It applies to all jobs. It's just we only see the disastrous effects and with actual disasters when women are in jobs where real terrible things happen from their incompetence, like bridges falling, female cops shooting innocent people, Secret Service women not knowing what the hell they're doing. It's only in those jobs where we see the just catastrophic effects. But these effects are in place when women are, have lesser jobs, like secretaries, or making horrible, stupid blunders, or,
because all jobs carry stresses.
Right.
And women, fundamentally, we're talking about the amygdala and the parts of the brain that involve stress and in responding to stress. Females fundamentally need the comforts of home, that God created them that way. All the 20th century popes agree. The idea of a public stress, and by public I just mean being outside of the home, and being a public stress which is economically contingent. Your economic well-being, if you rely on your wife's wage, depends on her ability to handle any stress in a job. And I don't care if it's a secretary. The legal secretaries at my law job, when our boss would get stressed out, and he would get very stressed out, they would get 100 times as stressed out. And it affects the workplace. It doesn't just have to do with a job where someone gets killed. If female incompetence rears its ugly head, which is an inevitability, someone misfiles a report or a memo. Or more importantly than that, a child for, 13 years of education is miseducated. From K through 12, children are miseducated. That's really important.
Or feminized in Catholic churches. Half of these women who work in Catholic schools are imparting the faith in a way that the young men in their classrooms utterly lose their faith, because men don't take inspiration from women when it comes to serious matters such as theology.
And that was part of the plan. Flush women into the church and the diocese and the parish schools and the chanceries, and now into the diaconate and maybe the priesthood. And less, that is to say fewer and fewer, Christian men will take the faith seriously. It's part of the diabolic plan. It's why Mary said at Fatima that the attack on the family would be the devil's last one. Because not only do people lose their lives, yeah, that's important. But what's more important than that? People lose their faith. Because women, by inerrant scripture, were forbidden to teach the faith. And women are being emplaced as doctors. Doctor just means teacher. Doctrine. A bringer of doctrine. Women are being emplaced as the bringers of the word. Women already teach men. Like almost 100% of your teachers were women. And as a young man or a young woman yourself, you don't take that seriously, particularly in the realm of theology. So this is the real story. This is the real angle. And I hope, even if you don't agree with me or you don't agree with Steph, I hope you don't think we're trying to have hot takes. This is really invariably what we believe is going on. So do me the favor of, even if you disagree with me, we can disagree and still be friends. I'm going to keep chipping away at your defense here, but we'll still be friends. People don't have to agree about everything. But do me the service of thinking, okay, this is not just us trying to have a hot take. This has become a huge part of our ministry, viz, making you see that. Namely, making you guys to see that. This is not about DEI, which is not wrong if women belong in the workplace. This is not about certain kinds of jobs are categorically exempted from female competence outside the home. No. Just as men make bad mothers, or what are they called? Birthing persons. Am I trying to be edgy by saying that? Men are bad at being birthing persons or incompetent. It's beyond our ability. Women are bad at having jobs. People get hurt or die when society becomes gender dysphoria. Do not blame Kimberly Cheadle. It's bad for her. She just bought the lie. Don't blame her. Blame yourselves. The error is not in our stars, but in ourselves. It's in our culture. It's in our culture. She's just a product of this. So blame us. That's who we need to blame, ourselves. And undo this lie. Well, I know it might cost money at first, but pull your wives out of the workplace. Make a plan. Do it within 6 months. And Steph said, men, just get better jobs. Or just learn to live frugally. When I lived on a single teacher's salary in California with 6 kids, I had a smaller house
We didn't have new cars.
than I have here. We didn't have new cars.
We didn't have multiple televisions. We didn't eat.
We had, I think, multiple televisions. They're very cheap
maybe
now.
So.
But we didn't have multiple vacations. Some of the vacations were cheaper.
We had a flat screen. We were the last people we knew that got a flat screen television. So.
Yeah. That's how it is. But we had our own house. Yeah, I mean, we rented in California. We lived in the most expensive state. And we rented. By the way, get out of your blue state, get to a red state today. Go to realestateforlife.org. If you want to support this channel, please, we need your help. Do it by Locals or Subscribestar, or subscribe to us on YouTube. We're trying to go to the chat more, and we want to go to the subscribed YouTubers on chat.
I'm saying thank you to Jim, who is a member of the channel. Thank you very much, Mr. Jim. And I don't know if I see anybody else right now, but we'll call you out when you sign up for.
Thanks, Jim. And thanks to the man who was commenting earlier. I do not mind disagreeing. I'm not one of these guys that gets defensive. I'm just saying, don't mischaracterize my position as just trying to be provocative. We're not. This is really the truth. It's really the Christian truth. And we're going to keep chipping away at it. God bless America. God bless the American family. Let's restore the American family by making the case for patriarchy. Steph and I have that special class that's on sale now. Starts September the 11th. It's a course. It's 9 classes. Begins on September the 11th. It's on, and there's going to be a book that we're releasing soon. It's called Leave and Cleave, about how none of you know how. Some people have figured it out the way we did, but 98% of Catholics, non-Catholics, don't know how to do marriage because it's a secret that used to be taught how to do marriage, but now it's censored. It's now censored. And there's some really basic, kind of easy switches to flip that will make your marriage better. We're teaching 9 of them in this course. Go to timothyjgordon.com and enroll today. We have limited spots. It begins September the 11th. You can enroll today. Go to timothyjgordon.com. Deus Volt.
Yeah.